She signed her name at 11:47 p.m., in a hospice room that smelled like industrial soap and goodbye. Her grandmother was dying 3 feet away. The monitors beeped their slow countdown. And the man in the suit, the one who'd appeared from nowhere with an envelope that would change everything, watched her hands shake as she wrote. Nevaeh Parson, 28 years old. Interior designer. Daughter. Granddaughter. And now, apparently, the future wife of a man she'd never met. A man in a wheelchair. A man whose family had more money than some countries. A man whose enemies had already tried to kill him once. She didn't know any of that yet. All she knew was the number at the bottom of the page. Enough to save her mother. Enough to give her grandmother a peaceful passing. Enough to buy back everything her father's death had stolen. What she didn't know, what nobody told her, was that some prices aren't measured in money. Some contracts have clauses written in invisible ink. And some marriages aren't meant to save you. They're meant to trap you. But here's the thing about Nevaeh Parson, she'd been underestimated her whole life. And the people who brought her to Seoul? They had no idea what they'd just invited through their front door. Now before we go any further, I need you to do something real quick. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, this is your sign. I put hours into these stories, making sure every detail hits right, every twist earns its moment. And honestly, the algorithm only shows this to more people when you subscribe. So if you want more stories like this, stories that actually make you feel something, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one. Okay, let's get into it. Room 412 at Mercy Hospital had a particular kind of quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that sits heavy on your chest, that makes the beep of monitors and the hum of fluorescent lights feel like they're inside your skull. Nevaeh Parson had been sitting in the same plastic chair for 6 hours. The chair wasn't designed for comfort. Nothing in hospice was. The room smelled like hand sanitizer trying to cover something else. Something final. Her phone screen showed 12% battery. She'd forgotten her charger at the apartment. Again. 3rd time this week. She'd have to make those 12 percentage points last until she could get home. If she went home. Her grandmother, Gloria, slept in the bed by the window. 81 years old. Retired schoolteacher. Widow. The strongest woman Nevaeh had ever known, now reduced to shallow breaths and paper-thin skin stretched over bones. Nevaeh watched the rise and fall of Gloria's chest. Rise, fall. Rise, fall. The rhythm was slower than last week. The nurses didn't have to tell her what that meant. She picked at the half-eaten vending machine sandwich on the tray beside her. Turkey and Swiss on bread that tasted like cardboard. She wasn't hungry, but her body needed something. She'd been wearing the same clothes since yesterday morning, black sweater, gray slacks. The professional outfit she'd worn to convince her last client that everything was fine, that the interior design project was on schedule, that the woman behind the portfolio wasn't drowning in debt and desperation. Her braids needed redoing. She'd been meaning to schedule an appointment for 2 weeks, but between hospice visits and work deadlines she barely met and bills she definitely wasn't meeting, hair appointments had fallen somewhere below luxury and into impossible. She was calculating, again, how many more days she could miss work before she lost the Richardson project. 3, maybe 4 if she worked through the weekend. After that, she'd have to choose between her grandmother and her livelihood. Some choice. Gloria stirred. Nevaeh leaned forward instantly. Grandma? You need something? Water? Gloria's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were cloudy, unfocused. Then they found Nevaeh's face, and something in them sharpened. Baby girl. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You still here? Where else would I be? Gloria's hand moved across the blanket. Nevaeh took it. The skin was cool, delicate as tissue paper. But the grip was still there. Faint, but there. Your father, Gloria said. He'd be so proud of you. How you fight. How you keep going. That's his blood in you. That's Parson blood. Nevaeh's throat tightened. If she opened her mouth, she'd tell the truth. She'd say that the fighting wasn't working. That the keeping going was grinding her down to nothing. That Parson blood didn't pay hospital bills or rent or make clients return calls. So she just nodded. Smiled. Held on. Gloria's eyes drifted closed again. Within moments, her breathing evened out into sleep. The door opened. The man who entered was Korean, maybe mid-50s. Silver threading through black hair combed back with precision. His suit was charcoal gray, cut so perfectly it had to be custom. Nevaeh designed spaces for a living. She knew expensive when she saw it. That suit cost more than her monthly rent. Easily. He carried a single envelope. Cream-colored. Heavy stock. Gold-embossed seal. Korean characters alongside English text. Miss Parson. His English was flawless, with just the faintest accent. My name is Director Kong. I apologize for the intrusion. Nevaeh stood. Her body protested. 6 hours in that chair had locked up her lower back. Who are you? How did you get in here? Visiting hours ended at. I represent interested parties. He said it like that explained everything. Parties who are aware of your family's situation. And who wish to make a proposition. A proposition. Yes. Nevaeh looked at her grandmother. Still sleeping. Then back at this stranger in his expensive suit, holding his expensive envelope, speaking in his careful, measured tone. I don't know you, she said. I don't know what interested parties means. And I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Director Kong didn't react. Didn't flinch. Just set the envelope on the bedside table, next to the vending machine sandwich and the plastic cup of lukewarm water. I understand your caution. It's warranted. He produced a business card from his jacket pocket. Plain white. Black text. A name. A phone number. Nothing else. This envelope contains a proposal. The terms are generous. Should you choose to read it, you'll find that it addresses your family's financial difficulties. All of them. Something cold slid down Nevaeh's spine. All of them. The mortgage on your mother's home. The medical debts. Your own business obligations. Your grandmother's care here. He gestured to the room. All of it. Resolved. Nevaeh's hands curled into fists at her sides. And what's the catch? For the first time, something flickered in Director Kang's expression. Not quite a smile. Just acknowledgement. Read the contract, Miss Parson. You have until Thursday to decide. He bowed slightly. Not a Western bow, something more formal, more precise. Then he turned and left, his footsteps silent on the linoleum. The door clicked shut behind him. Nevaeh stared at the envelope. Cream paper. Gold seal. The weight of it felt significant. She didn't touch it. Not yet. But she couldn't look away. Behind her, the monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Her grandmother slept. And on Gloria's finger, the thin gold band she'd worn for 52 years caught the fluorescent light. That ring was supposed to be Nevaeh's someday. An heirloom. A piece of family history. At this rate, she might have to sell it. Here's something they don't teach you in school. In America, getting sick isn't just about the illness. It's about the bills that follow. Not because you're irresponsible. Not because you made bad choices. Just because the cost of staying alive is higher than most people can afford. Gloria Parson had Medicare. She had supplemental insurance. She had everything she was supposed to have. And it still wasn't enough. The hospice was covered, mostly. But mostly left gaps. And gaps became debts. And debts became collectors. And collectors became that cold feeling in your chest when the phone rings. That's the thing about medical debt. It doesn't care about your character. It doesn't care about your family history or your work ethic or how many generations of strength run through your blood. It just keeps growing. Nevaeh's studio apartment in Rogers Park was exactly 400 square feet of barely making it. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and office. A kitchen the size of a closet. A bathroom where her knees touched the wall when she sat on the toilet. The rent was $1,200 a month. She was 2 weeks late. The notice under her door, her second, was a polite reminder that the third wouldn't be polite at all. It was 11 p.m. when she finally got home. She dropped her bag by the door. Kicked off her shoes. Stood in the dark for a moment, not bothering to turn on the lights. On the kitchen counter, bills spread like fallen leaves. Electric. Gas. Phone. Credit card minimum payments she kept juggling. Her laptop sat closed beside them. She'd meant to work on the Richardson project tonight, but the Wi-Fi was out. She'd forgotten to pay that too. The drafting table by the window was covered in sketches. Interior design concepts. Color palettes. Space plans for projects that might or might not actually happen. This was supposed to be her way out. Her degree from Northwestern. Her business. Her future. Right now, it felt like a museum exhibit. Things Nevaeh used to believe in. She turned on the kitchen light. Flinched at the brightness. The envelope sat in her bag. She'd almost left it at the hospital. Almost convinced herself it wasn't real. But the weight of it was unmistakable. Real paper. Real presence. She pulled it out. Set it on the counter among the bills. Then she opened the refrigerator. Half a bottle of cheap red wine from the night before. An apple going soft. Leftover rice from the corner takeout place. She poured the wine. Sat on the stool at the counter. Stared at the envelope. The gold seal glinted under the kitchen light. Korean characters she couldn't read. English text she could. She was going to open it. She knew she was going to open it from the moment that man walked into her grandmother's room. But she made herself wait. Made herself finish half the glass of wine first. Made herself feel like she had a choice. Then she broke the seal. The contract was 20 pages thick. Bilingual. Korean on the left side, English on the right. Legal language that made her head hurt after the first paragraph. Terms and conditions. Clauses and subclauses. But the key terms were clear enough. Page 3, marriage agreement between Min Suk-ki, groom, and Nevaeh Marie Parson, bride. Marriage. The word sat there, stark on the page. She read it 3 times, making sure she understood. She kept reading. Page 5, duration. Minimum term of 1 calendar year from date of ceremony. Extension subject to mutual agreement. Page 7, requirements. Cohabitation in Seoul, South Korea. Public appearances as needed for business and family functions. Complete discretion regarding the terms of this arrangement. She flipped to page 12, compensation. Nevaeh's breath caught. All outstanding debts belonging to the Parson family, totaling $847,000, to be paid in full within 30 days of contract execution. Personal payment to the bride of $500,000, payable upon completion of minimum term. All medical and hospice expenses for Gloria May Parson to be covered in full for the duration of her care. She read it again. Then again. $847,000. That was everything. The house. The medical bills. The credit cards her mother had maxed out trying to keep them afloat. All of it. Plus $500,000 for her. Clean. Free. Her hands were shaking. She flipped to page 15. Termination clause. The language turned cold. Should the bride terminate the agreement prior to the minimum term without mutual consent, all financial benefits shall be reversed. Debts shall be reinstated. Payments shall be reclaimed. In other words, sign this, and you're locked in. No escape hatch. No change of mind. She set down the contract. Picked up her phone. 11% battery now. She typed into the search bar, Min Suk Ki. The results loaded slowly. Her Wi-Fi was out, but she still had data. Barely. Images first. A man in his early 30s. Sharp features. Expensive haircuts. The kind of face that belonged on magazine covers and corporate websites. Min Suk Ki, heir to Min Global Holdings. Photos of him at galas, at board meetings, at charity events. Standing next to politicians, celebrities, business titans. Then different photos. More recent. Min Suk Ki in a wheelchair. Headlines scrolled past, tragic accident leaves Min Air paralyzed. Questions swirl around future of Min Global. Can the crippled prince still lead? She clicked on an article from 8 months ago. The details were sparse. A car accident on a highway outside Seoul. The driver killed instantly. Min Suk Ki survived but suffered severe spinal injuries. Prognosis, unclear. The company stock had dipped. Recovered. Dipped again. There were whispers in the comments. Speculation. Some people didn't believe it was an accident. She closed the browser. She stared at the photos she'd seen. The before and after. The man who stood like he owned every room he entered. And then the man in the wheelchair, something harder in his eyes now. She was supposed to marry him. This stranger. This billionaire. This man whose family had reasons she didn't understand for wanting her specifically. Why her? The question circled in her head. Then she noticed the second envelope. Smaller. Tucked inside the first. She'd almost missed it. She opened it. A plane ticket. One way. Chicago O'Hare to Incheon International. Departure, Thursday, 5:47 a.m. 2 days from now. They were giving her 2 days to decide the rest of her life. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Mom calling. She didn't answer. Couldn't. But the voicemail notification popped up almost immediately. She played it. Her mother's voice came through. Thick. Wet. The sound of crying barely held back. Nivea, baby, I need you to call me. The collectors came again. They were at the door for 20 minutes. I didn't let them in, but they said they're going to take the cars. They're going to take everything. I don't know what to do. I can't breathe. Please. Please call me. Please tell me there's something we can do. The message ended. Nivea sat in her dark apartment. Wine going warm. Bills everywhere. Contract on the counter. Thursday. 2 days. The window behind her showed the Chicago skyline. All those buildings she used to dream about designing. All that future she used to believe was hers. She looked at the plane ticket again. Seoul, South Korea. The house in Hyde Park looked worse every time she visited. Nivea pulled into her mother's driveway on Wednesday afternoon and sat in the car for a full minute before getting out. Gray sky threatened rain. Wind cut through her jacket. The paint was peeling on the shutters. The lawn had more brown than green. The for sale sign next door had been there for 9 months. Turns out nobody wanted to buy into a neighborhood that was sliding downhill. This was the house she grew up in. Where her father taught her to ride a bike on the sidewalk out front. Where she'd done homework at the kitchen table. Where Christmas mornings meant warmth and laughter and the smell of her grandmother's sweet potato pie. Now it looked like what it was, a family drowning. She got out. Walked up the path. Noticed the foreclosure notice taped to the door. Her mother had tried to hide it, apparently. The tape was coming loose at the corners. Nevaeh didn't knock. Just used her key. The inside was dim. Curtains drawn. The air smelled stale. Denise hadn't been opening windows. On the kitchen counter, she counted 5 medication bottles. Her mother's lupus treatment. The pills that cost $400 a month even with insurance. Mama? In here. Denise Parson was in the living room, sitting on the couch that used to be beige and was now something closer to gray. She looked smaller than she should. 54 years old but looking a decade older. The lupus had aged her, or maybe it was the stress. Hard to tell anymore. She didn't get up when Nevaeh entered. Just looked at her with eyes that were red from crying. You got my message. I got your message. Nevaeh sat in the armchair across from her. The same armchair her father used to occupy. I also got something else. She pulled the contract from her bag. Set it on the coffee table between them. Denise looked at it. Didn't touch it. Something in her expression shifted. Not surprise. Recognition. Nevaeh felt her stomach drop. You knew. Baby. You knew about this. Before that man showed up at the hospital. You knew. Denise's hands twisted in her lap. I didn't know exactly what they would offer. But I knew someone was coming. I knew there was interest. Interest. Nevaeh's voice was flat. In me. As what? A product? In helping us. Denise leaned forward. That's all I wanted. Help. Do you know what it's like to watch everything fall apart? To know your mother is dying in that hospital and you can't even pay for her room? To know your daughter is working herself to death trying to save a business that's barely surviving? So you sold me. It wasn't a question. I saved you. Denise's voice cracked. I saved all of us. You think I wanted this? You think I dreamed about my daughter marrying some stranger in another country? But what choice did I have, Nevaeh? What choice did any of us have? The words hung between them. Heavy. Sharp. Nevaeh looked at the foreclosure notice visible through the window. At the medication bottles on the counter. At the woman in front of her who had been carrying weight she never talked about. How did you even find these people? Denise's eyes dropped. Your father. His old clients. The ones who got him in trouble. The ones who got him killed, you mean? Silence. I reached out. Years ago. After you started your business. Asked if there was anyone who might be able to help if things got bad. Denise swallowed. I never heard back. Not until 3 months ago. 3 months. Nevaeh did the math. Right around when Gloria's condition worsened. Right around when everything started accelerating toward disaster. They said they could help. That there was a family in Korea who needed something. Someone. And if we could provide it, they would take care of everything. Me. Nevaeh's voice was hollow. I'm the something they needed. Denise finally looked at her. Really looked. Did you read the contract? Did you see the numbers? $800,000, Nevaeh. Everything we owe. Gone. Plus money for you. Real money. Enough to start over. Enough to finally breathe. And all I have to do is marry a man I've never met and move to the other side of the world. For 1 year. That's all. Then you come home. You come home rich. You come home free. Nevaeh stood up. Walked to the window. Looked out at the street she grew up on. You should have asked me first. Would you have said yes? The question landed like a punch. Because they both knew the answer. A week ago, a month ago, a year ago, Nevaeh would have said no. Would have found another way. Would have believed there was another way. But now? Now her grandmother was dying. Her mother was drowning. Her business was failing. And the only hand reaching toward her was attached to a contract that promised everything and demanded only her freedom in return. I don't know, she said finally. I don't know what I would have said. Denise rose from the couch. Crossed to her daughter. Put her hands on Nevaeh's shoulders. You're the strongest person I know. Stronger than me. Stronger than your father was. Her voice broke. If anyone can survive this, it's you. And when it's over, you come home. You hear me? You come home to me. Nevaeh didn't answer. She picked up the contract from the table. Held it in her hands. 20 pages. Her entire future. Then she walked to the door. I need to think. Nevaeh. I said I need to think, Mama. She left without looking back. Here's something about generational trauma that people don't talk about enough. It doesn't stay in the past. It echoes forward. It shapes the choices you didn't even know you were making. Marcus Parson died of a heart attack 8 years ago. Official cause of death, cardiac arrest. Unofficial cause, the stress of knowing too much about the wrong people. The weight of secrets he couldn't share. The fear of what might happen to his family if he talked. He never talked. He just stopped. His heart gave out at 49, in the driveway of the house he'd worked his whole life to afford. After that, everything unraveled. The life insurance covered the funeral. The savings covered 6 months. The pension covered a year. And then the gap started appearing. The bills that didn't get paid. The maintenance that didn't get done. The slow slide from comfortable to struggling to desperate. Denise picked up what pieces she could. Got sick. Kept going. Got sicker. Kept going. Nevaeh built a business. Almost made it work. Watched it slip through her fingers. And Gloria just got older. Frailier. More expensive to keep alive. Nobody planned for this. Nobody chooses to drown. But the water keeps rising, and eventually you have to make choices that don't feel like choices at all. That's where Nevaeh Parson found herself on a Wednesday afternoon in Chicago. Holding a contract that promised salvation. Knowing the cost might be higher than anyone was admitting. And knowing, deep down, that she was going to sign it anyway. Thursday, 4 a.m. O'Hare International Airport. Nevaeh stood in the security line with her single carry-on bag. The same bag she'd packed for weekend trips to visit friends in New York. The same bag that now held everything she was taking to start a new life on the other side of the world. One suitcase. Clothes for a week. Toiletries. Her sketchbook. Her laptop. And the signed contract in a folder at the very bottom, sealed and ready to hand over to whoever was waiting for her in Seoul. Her grandmother's ring was on her finger. It felt heavier than it should. The security line moved forward. 3 people ahead of her now. 2. 1. She kept touching the ring. Kept thinking about the night before. Wednesday night. 9 p.m. Hospice room. Gloria was awake. Really awake. The most alert she'd been in weeks. Nevaeh didn't know if it was the new medication or just one of those unexplainable moments of clarity that sometimes happen at the end. Either way, she was grateful. You're going somewhere. Gloria's voice was soft but certain. I can see it in your face. Nevaeh sat in the same plastic chair. Held her grandmother's hand. I got a job offer. Overseas. Temporary. Where? South Korea. Seoul. Gloria's eyes searched her face. 81 years of wisdom behind them. 81 years of watching people lie. That's a long way to go for temporary. It's a good opportunity. I'll be back before you know it. Gloria was quiet for a moment. The monitors beeped. Outside, a nurse passed in the hallway, footsteps soft on linoleum. You know, Gloria said finally, your grandfather and I started with nothing. Less than nothing. We got married in his mother's backyard because we couldn't afford a church. Ate beans and rice for 6 months because meat was too expensive. Nevaeh had heard this story before. But she listened anyway. People told us we were crazy. Told us it would never work. 2 kids from nothing, trying to build something. Gloria's grip tightened. But we did it. We built a life. A family. A home. She looked at her ring. The thin gold band. He gave me this the day before our wedding. Found it in a pawn shop. Saved up for 3 months. It's not worth much, maybe $50. Maybe less. It's worth everything, Nevaeh whispered. That's right. Gloria nodded. Because it's not about what things cost. It's about what they mean. She started working the ring off her finger. Her knuckles were swollen now, it took effort. But she got it off. Held it up. Take it. Grandma. Take it. Gloria pressed the ring into Nevaeh's palm. Whatever you're really doing, wherever you're really going, you take this with you. And you remember who you are. Nevaeh's vision blurred. Tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally spilling over. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you do. Gloria's voice was firm. Certain. Parson women don't break. We bend. We adapt. But we don't break. Whatever's waiting for you out there, you face it straight on. You hear me? Nevaeh nodded. Couldn't speak. And when it's done, when you've done what you need to do, you come home. You come back to me. I will. Promise me. I promise. Gloria's eyes drifted closed. The effort of the conversation was catching up with her. But there was a small smile on her face. Good girl, she murmured. Good, strong girl. Back at security. The agent was waiting. Ma'am? Your boarding pass? Nevaeh handed it over. The agent glanced at it. Seoul, South Korea. Have a nice flight. Thanks. She moved through the scanner. Collected her bag. Started walking toward the gate. The terminal was quiet at this hour. Just a handful of travelers scattered across the seats. The coffee shops were just opening, baristas setting up machines, the smell of espresso beginning to fill the air. Gate B17. Boarding in 40 minutes. Nevaeh found a seat by the window. Looked out at the runway. The first hints of dawn were starting to appear on the horizon, painting the clouds pink and orange. She touched her grandmother's ring. 52 years that ring had been on Gloria's finger. Through poverty. Through struggle. Through raising children and burying a husband and watching the world change around her. Now it was on Nevaeh's hand. And she was about to carry it across the ocean. Her phone buzzed. Text from her mother. I love you. Be safe. Come home. She didn't reply. Didn't know what to say. The boarding announcement came. First class passengers. Business class. Then general boarding. She stood in line with her one bag. Handed over her pass. Walked down the jetway. The plane was huge. A 777. 14 hours of flying ahead of her. She found her seat. Economy. Middle row. Put her bag in the overhead. Sat down. Buckled in. The ring caught the overhead light. Glinted. $50 in a pawn shop. Worth everything. The engine started. The plane began to taxi. And as the sun rose over Lake Michigan, painting Chicago in gold, Nevaeh Parson left the only home she'd ever known. Sometimes survival looks like sacrifice. Sometimes you have to leave home to save it. Nevaeh wasn't running away. She was running towards something. She just didn't know what yet. All she knew was that in 14 hours, she would land in a country she'd never visited. She would meet a man she'd never spoken to. She would marry into a family whose money came from places she didn't understand. And somehow, she had to survive it. For 1 year. For her mother. For her grandmother. For the chance at something better. The plane lifted off. Chicago fell away beneath the clouds. She boarded the plane at 5:47 a.m. By the time the sun rose over Lake Michigan, she was already somewhere over the Pacific. 14 hours later, she would land in a country she'd never visited, to marry a man she'd never met, in a world that had no room for mistakes. 14 hours trapped in a metal tube hurtling through the sky is a special kind of torture. Nevaeh had managed maybe 2 hours of sleep, broken, uncomfortable stretches between announcements and meal services and the perpetual glow of screens. She'd spent the rest staring at the flight map, watching the little plane icon creep across the Pacific, bringing her closer to a life she couldn't imagine. By the time they landed at Incheon International, her body thought it was 6 a.m. while the local clocks insisted it was 7 p.m. Her mouth felt like sandpaper. Her eyes burned. The thin gold band on her finger felt impossibly heavy. She followed the stream of passengers toward immigration, shuffling forward in a daze. That's when a flight attendant appeared at her side. "Miss Parson?" The woman's English was perfect, her smile practiced. "Please come with me. You have a private arrival arranged." Before Nevaeh could respond, she was being guided away from the main terminal, down corridors she didn't know existed, through doors marked with Korean characters she couldn't read. Everything around her, the signs, the announcements over the PA system, the conversations of passing staff, was completely foreign. It hit her then, really hit her, she was in a country where she didn't speak the language. Where she didn't know anyone. Where she was completely dependent on strangers. Her heart rate kicked up. Her palms went damp. The flight attendant's voice became background noise. They emerged into what looked like a private lounge. No crowds. No lines. Just polished floors, soft lighting, and 2 men in dark suits standing at attention. One of the men stepped forward and held out his hand. "Your passport, please." Nevaeh hesitated, then handed it over. He took it and disappeared through a door. Just took it. Her only formal identification. "Miss Parson." A younger man approached, late 20s, maybe, with a face that seemed too gentle for his precisely tailored suit. His eyes were warm in a way that surprised her. As if he were actually seeing her, not just processing her. "I'm J1, Mr. Min's personal assistant. Welcome to Seoul." He bowed slightly. "I imagine you have questions." Nevaeh almost laughed. Questions? She had nothing but questions. But exhaustion and hunger and the sheer strangeness of everything had left her numb. "Where's my passport going?" she managed. "Being processed. Expedited visa arrangements. It will be returned to you at the estate." He gestured toward the exit. "The car is waiting. Your luggage. I just have this." She indicated her carry-on. 1 bag. Her entire life. Something flickered in Jaewon's eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or pity. He covered it quickly. "Of course. This way, please." Outside, the evening air was crisp, edged with a chill that reminded her it was late autumn here too. The sky was already dark, but Seoul glowed, a constellation of lights and movement. A black car waited at the curb. Not just any car, a Maybach, the kind she'd only seen in magazines. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. Jaewon gestured for her to enter first. The interior was butter-soft leather and the kind of silence that only comes with extreme wealth. Jae-won sat opposite her as the car pulled away from the curb. The ride to the estate will take approximately 40 minutes, depending on traffic. His voice was measured, professional. Tonight, you'll rest. Tomorrow, there will be preparations, measurements for additional clothing, paperwork, a brief cultural orientation. The ceremony is scheduled for Saturday at 4. That soon? Nevaeh's voice sounded strange in her own ears. The timeline was specified in the contract. Of course it was. She'd read it, signed it, but somehow it hadn't seemed real until now. Through the tinted windows, Seoul swept past. Towering buildings. Neon signs. Crowds of people moving with purpose. Then gradually, the urban density gave way to wider streets, fewer pedestrians, higher walls. Security gates appeared. Cameras perched on corners like mechanical birds of prey. She was entering a different world. One governed by money and power and rules she didn't know yet. Miss Parson. Jae-won's voice broke through her thoughts. There's something you should understand. Mr. Min values his privacy. The family values appearances. You understand. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. She didn't understand. Not really. But she knew what he was trying to say. Don't embarrass them. Don't ask too many questions. Don't be too much of yourself. As they approached what must be the estate, a massive wall appeared ahead, with ornate gates slowly opening. Jae-won's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression flickered, just for an instant. A shadow crossing his face. Then it was gone. He put the phone away without comment. Nevaeh noticed. Didn't ask. Filed it away. The car passed through the gates and up a winding drive lined with perfectly manicured trees. At the end stood the Min family estate, a modernist palace of glass and stone, lit from below like a museum exhibit. Home, she thought. But the word felt hollow. The Min estate wasn't just a house. It was a statement. Nevaeh stepped through the massive front doors into an entrance hall that could have swallowed her entire Chicago apartment 6 times over. Her designer's eye cataloged everything automatically: soaring ceilings, Italian marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than her student loans. The space was perfectly proportioned, each element placed with mathematical precision. And yet, there was something cold about it. Beautiful but untouchable. Like a showroom no one actually lived in. An older woman waited at the foot of the grand staircase. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled into a tight bun, her posture military straight. Her dark eyes swept over Nevaeh once, taking in the wrinkled travel clothes, the single bag, the exhaustion written across her face. Mrs. Choi is the head housekeeper, Jae-won explained. She will show you to your suite. Mrs. Choi bowed slightly. Welcome, Miss Parson. Please follow me. Her English was clipped, formal. Not friendly, but not hostile either. Professional. Like Nevaeh was a guest at a very exclusive hotel. They ascended the staircase in silence. The only sound was their footsteps on the marble and the faint hum of the climate control system. No music. No laughter. No signs of the family who supposedly lived here. The upper hallway was a gallery of expensive minimalism. Original artwork on the walls. Nevaeh recognized a Rothko that had to be worth millions. Fresh flowers in crystal vases that would probably shatter if she breathed on them wrong. No personal photos. Nothing that said, home. Mrs. Choi stopped at a door, opened it, and stepped aside. You're sweet. If you need anything, press the button by the bed. Someone will attend to you. And then she was gone, walking back the way they'd come, leaving Nevaeh alone at the threshold of her new life. The suite was bigger than her entire Chicago apartment. A sitting area with a silk-upholstered sofa and matching chairs. A bedroom with a king-sized bed that looked like it had never been slept in. A bathroom with a soaking tub big enough to swim in. A walk-in closet larger than her childhood bedroom. Everything was cream and ivory and pale gold. Elegant. Expensive. Anonymous. She set her bag down by the door. Crossed to the bed. Sat on the edge. It was too soft. The kind of soft that swallows you whole. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered in the distance. All those lights. All those lives. And here she was, in this silent palace on a hill, a stranger in a stranger's home. She pulled her sketchbook from her bag. Opened it to the design she'd been working on before everything changed, a living room redesign for a client in Lincoln Park. Clean lines. Warm colors. A space meant for actual living. It seemed like another life now. Another Nevaeh. One who had choices. Dreams. A future that belonged to her. Her stomach growled. She realized she hadn't eaten a proper meal in over 24 hours. The airplane food had been inedible, and she'd been too nervous to try the snacks. But pride kept her from pressing the button Mrs. Choi had pointed to. She wouldn't be the American who couldn't last 2 hours without demanding service. Instead, she showered. The bathroom had 7 different shower heads and a control panel that took her 5 minutes to figure out. She changed into the only clean clothes she had left. Sat back on the bed. Stared at the ceiling. The silence of the house pressed in on her. Not the familiar silence of her Chicago apartment, with its radiator clanks and neighbor noises filtering through thin walls. This was a different kind of silence. The kind that costs money. The kind that keeps secrets. 20 minutes later, a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find no one. Just a covered tray on a small table in the hallway. She brought it inside. Under the silver dome, a simple meal. Rice. Soup. Banchan, small side dishes she vaguely recognized from Korean restaurants in Chicago. A pot of tea. No note. No explanation. But someone had been watching. Someone had known she needed to eat. She sat at the small table by the window and ate slowly, methodically. The food was delicious, but she barely tasted it. Her mind was elsewhere, back in Chicago, in her grandmother's hospice room, in her mother's living room with its foreclosure notice on the door. When she finished, she set the tray outside her door and went back to bed. Late into the night, she lay awake, listening. Footsteps in distant corridors. The soft closing of doors. The almost imperceptible movement of security personnel outside. She was being watched. Maybe. Or maybe she was just paranoid. In this house, it was hard to tell the difference. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by luxury you didn't choose and can't enjoy. It's not about being alone, it's about being displaced. Removed from the context that gives your life meaning. Nevaeh Parson was experiencing this displacement in its purest form. Designer furniture that wasn't hers. Expensive sheets that didn't smell like home. A perfect view of a city she didn't know. This is what happens when you're inserted into someone else's world. Your presence is tolerated, not welcomed. Your comfort is an afterthought, not a priority. You're expected to be grateful for the privilege of occupying space that was never meant for you. It's like being a character in someone else's story. Not the hero. Not even the villain. Just a plot device. A means to an end. And the worst part? You start to see yourself that way too. Mr. Min would like to see you. Mrs. Choi's voice cut through Nevaeh's thoughts. It was 10 a.m. on Friday. She'd been awake since 5, her body clock still hopelessly out of sync. She'd spent the morning exploring her suite, trying and failing to connect to Wi-Fi, and staring out the window at the manicured grounds below. When? She asked. Now. Mrs. Choi's expression made it clear this wasn't a request. I will take you to his study. Nevaeh followed the housekeeper through the maze-like corridors of the upper floor, mentally mapping the route. Left at the Rothko. Right at the unsettling sculpture that looked like melting bones. Down a narrower hallway with darker wood paneling. They stopped at a heavy door. Mrs. Choi knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Miss Parson, sir." She stepped aside. Nevaeh hesitated, then walked in. The study was exactly what you'd expect from a man whose net worth had 9 zeros: dark wood, leather-bound books lining floor-to-ceiling shelves, a massive desk that could have doubled as a dining table. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked private gardens where fall leaves drifted from carefully tended trees. This was a room built for power. A room where decisions were made that affected thousands of lives. And by the window, his wheelchair positioned so the morning light silhouetted him in gold, was Min Suk-ki. Nevaeh had studied his photos online. Had thought she knew what to expect. But images couldn't capture presence. Couldn't convey the force of a personality shaped by generations of wealth and influence. He turned as she entered. Sharp features. Expensive haircut. Eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in an instant: her posture, her clothing, the way she paused just inside the door instead of approaching. He didn't smile. "You came." His English was perfect, with just the faintest hint of an accent. The words weren't a greeting. They were an assessment. A test. "You paid." Nevaeh kept her voice level. People tend to show up when there's money involved. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or interest. Direct. "Good." He gestured to a chair across from his wheelchair. "Sit." She didn't move immediately. Took her time looking around the room, at the books, the artwork, the 2 copies of their contract laid out on the desk. Only when she was ready did she cross and take the seat. He noticed a slight tightening at the corner of his mouth. Not quite annoyance. Not quite respect. Something in between. A tea service sat untouched on a side table. Neither of them mentioned it. "I assume Director Kang explained the arrangement," Suk-ki said. "Not in detail. But I read the contract. And signed it." "Yes." He nodded once. "The terms are straightforward. 1 year. Public appearances as needed. Complete discretion." His voice was measured, clinical. "This is a transaction, Miss Parson. Nothing more. We both get what we need, and then it ends." There was that word. Transaction. As if she were a commodity being purchased. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "You could marry anyone. Anyone with conditions. Requirements. Expectations." His gaze was steady, unreadable. "And I don't have those?" "You have desperation. It's simpler." The words landed like a slap. Direct. Brutal. True. She didn't flinch. Didn't let him see that it stung. Instead, she leaned forward slightly. "Desperation's temporary. But I remember how people treat me when I'm down." Her voice was soft, but her eyes held his. "I remember that for a long time." Silence stretched between them. Something shifted in his expression, not softening, exactly. A reassessment. As if he were seeing her properly for the first time. He broke eye contact first, reaching for one of the contracts. "The ceremony will be small. 50 guests. Business associates, primarily. No press, though there will be controlled photography for public release." He spoke as if the previous exchange hadn't happened. "You'll be expected to smile. To play your part. Nothing more. And after? After, you will have your own suite. This one. We will maintain the appearance of a marriage when necessary. The rest of the time, you are free to do as you please within the estate grounds. I'm not allowed to leave. You're allowed. With security. This isn't a prison, Miss Parson. It's a performance." He set the contract down. "Are there any questions?" 1,000. But none she would give him the satisfaction of asking. No. Good. He wheeled back slightly, a clear dismissal. That will be all. She stood. Walked to the door. As her hand touched the handle. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. The garden. Don't be late. She turned. My dress? Provided. Unless you prefer your own. She paused. Thought of the traditional Korean wedding hanbok she'd seen in her research. Beautiful, elaborate, completely foreign to her. I'll wear my own. The smallest flicker of surprise crossed his face. Then nothing. As you wish. She left without another word, pulling the door firmly shut behind her. But not before she saw him reach for his phone, then stop. His gaze drifted to the window. Something troubled him, something he wasn't sharing. She filed that away too. By 4 p.m. on Saturday, Nevaeh Parson had been in Seoul for exactly 45 hours, and she was getting married. The irony wasn't lost on her. Back home, her friends spent months planning weddings. Years finding the right person. Here she was, standing in a bedroom in a foreign country, about to marry a man she'd spoken to exactly once. But she'd be damned if she was going to look the part they expected, the desperate American, grateful for rescue. The dress was her armor. After her meeting with Suk-ki, she'd approached Jae-won with a request: fabric, a sewing machine, time. He'd raised an eyebrow but asked no questions. By that evening, her suite contained everything she'd asked for, including design books on traditional Korean hanbok. She'd worked through the night. Through the morning. Through the haze of jet lag and anxiety and the surreal knowledge that this was actually happening. The result was hanging on the closet door now, an ivory silk gown with a modified Korean silhouette, high-waisted, clean lines, but with embroidery that incorporated subtle African textile patterns. It wasn't traditional Korean. It wasn't traditional American. It was something new. Something hers. She slipped it on. The fabric settled against her skin like a second self. A knock at the door. Jae-won, right on schedule. It's time, Miss Parson. The gardens were transformed. White flowers everywhere. Lanterns hanging from trees. Chairs arranged in neat rows facing an arch draped in silk. 50 guests, exactly as promised. Men in expensive suits. Women in designer dresses and traditional hanbok. No one Nevaeh knew. No one who knew her. She stood at the entrance to the garden path. No one to walk her down the aisle. She'd been asked if she wanted someone to play that role, and she'd refused. She would enter alone. Leave alone, eventually. The string quartet began playing. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. She took the first step. The guests stared. Some whispered behind hands. She caught fragments as she passed: American, desperate situation, the wheelchair. She kept her eyes forward. Her chin up. Her pace deliberate. At the end of the aisle, Min Suk-ki waited in his wheelchair. Impeccable in a black suit that had probably been tailored that morning. His expression was composed, controlled. Until he saw her dress. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile, she hadn't seen him smile yet, but a subtle change in his posture. He sat up straighter. His jaw tightened in a way that wasn't disapproval. Recognition, maybe. Of what, she wasn't sure. As she took her place beside him, she became aware of the woman in the front row. Young, late 20s, maybe. Strikingly beautiful in the way that takes money and breeding and ruthless self-discipline. Her hanbok was traditional but clearly designer, in a shade of blue so deep it was almost black. Their eyes met. The woman's gaze was calculating, cold, assessing Nevaeh like a predator sizing up unexpected competition. Neither looked away first. The officiant began speaking in Korean, then English. The ceremony was stripped of emotion. Vows that sounded like terms and conditions. Promises neither of them believed. When they exchanged rings, simple platinum bands, nothing ornate, it felt like signing paperwork. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," Suki simply brushed his lips against her cheek. Clinical. Public. She barely felt it. And just like that, she was married. The reception was a blur of faces and names she wouldn't remember. Champagne she didn't drink. Food she barely touched. She smiled until her cheeks ached, playing the role she'd been paid for. The woman in blue approached during a momentary lull. Up close, her perfection was even more intimidating. Not a hair out of place. Not a hint of genuine emotion in her smile. Beautiful dress. Her English was flawless, each word precisely enunciated. "Did you make it yourself?" "I did." Nevaeh kept her voice neutral. How resourceful. The smile never reached her eyes. "I suppose that's useful when you can't afford to buy things." The insult was so smooth, so perfectly delivered, that it almost slid past. Almost. I could say the same about personality. Nevaeh matched her tone exactly. The woman's smile froze. For a half-second, pure hatred flashed in her eyes. Then it was gone, covered by practiced charm. "Welcome to the family, Nevaeh. I'm Suyun. Min Suyun. Suki's sister." She turned and walked away, the silk of her hanbok whispering across the marble. Later, as the reception began to wind down, Jaewon appeared at Nevaeh's elbow. "I see you've met Miss Suyun. Is that what we're calling it?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "She's protective of family interests. That's a diplomatic way to say she hates me. Be careful." His voice dropped. Some people in this house have long memories and short patience. He was gone before she could respond, melting into the crowd of strangers celebrating a marriage that wasn't real. By 11 p.m., the last guests had gone. The flowers were being cleared. The staff moved silently, erasing evidence of the day. Nevaeh stood on the balcony of her suite, still in her dress, looking out at Seoul's skyline. She was married now. To a stranger. In a house full of people who wanted her gone. Somewhere behind her, a door closed. Footsteps receded. She was alone. But she was still standing. Tomorrow, she'd figure out the rest. The dining room in the Min estate could comfortably seat 12 people. The table was a single slab of polished walnut, long enough that voices would need to be raised for someone at one end to hear the other. Crystal chandelier overhead. Hand-painted silk panels on the walls. A room designed for family dinners, business discussions, important gatherings. Every morning, Nevaeh sat alone. Frost traced patterns on the garden windows as the staff moved silently around her, setting down dishes she couldn't name. Rice, of course. Soup with something floating in it that might be seaweed. Small banchan dishes, pickled vegetables, fermented bean paste, something that smelled strongly of fish. She ate what she could. Left what she couldn't. The staff removed the untouched dishes without comment. Her phone sat beside her plate. She checked it again. No new messages from her mother. She'd texted 3 times since the wedding. Nothing back. Just silence. Worry mixed with resentment in her chest. Was her mother angry? Sick? Had the collectors come back? Or was this just another thing Nevaeh was supposed to handle on her own? She turned the phone face down. Pulled out her sketchbook instead. This, at least, was still hers. The familiar weight of it. The pages filled with her ideas, her perspectives, her way of making sense of the world. She opened to a fresh page and began sketching what she could see through the window, the garden with its geometric precision, the way frost clung to carefully pruned branches. The clean lines of traditional Korean architecture translated into negative space on the page. The staff moved around her like ghosts. They never spoke directly to her. Never made eye contact for more than a second. They were polite, efficient, and completely impersonal. Still, she was learning them. The younger maid, Eun-ji, she'd heard Mrs. Choi call her, who refilled her tea without being asked. The gardener who gave the smallest nod when she passed him in the hallway. Small recognitions in a house full of strangers. A routine was forming, whether she wanted it or not. Breakfast at 7. Exercise in her room after, yoga stretches she remembered from a class she'd taken years ago. Reading the books that mysteriously appeared outside her door each morning, Korean history, business etiquette, language basics. Jae-won's doing, she suspected. Lunch at 1, usually in her suite. Afternoons exploring the estate or sketching. Dinner at 7, again alone. Of Suk-ki, she'd seen nothing since the wedding. They were married on paper, strangers in practice. Sleep came hardest. The bed was still too soft. The silence too complete. Sometimes she'd lie awake until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if her grandmother was still alive, if her mother was coping, if anyone back home was thinking of her. On day 6, she began testing a theory. She'd noticed how staff seemed to materialize whenever she entered a new area of the house. At first, she thought it was coincidence. By the 4th time, she knew better. So she deliberately wandered into the West Wing, an area she hadn't explored before. A corridor lined with traditional Korean paintings. Doors that probably led to rooms she wasn't meant to enter. 1 minute and 40 seconds later, a staff member appeared. A young man she hadn't seen before. "Miss Parson. May I assist you with something?" His tone was perfectly polite. His eyes were watchful. "Just exploring," she said. "Getting to know my new home." He nodded. "Perhaps I can show you back to the main hall? This area is seldom used. Not forbidden. Just discouraged." The distinction was subtle. She smiled. "Of course. Thank you." As she followed him back, she mentally added another bar to the cage. Invisible, but present nonetheless. The sunroom faced south, catching the afternoon light even as the days grew shorter. Glass walls, white furniture, tropical plants that had no business thriving in a Seoul winter. Nivea had claimed it as her own on day 6, bringing her sketchbook and spending hours working on designs that might never see construction. On day 7, at exactly 3 p.m., her solitude was interrupted. "Adjusting well?" Nivea looked up from her sketch. Min Soo-yeon stood in the doorway, as perfectly put together as she'd been at the wedding. Cashmere sweater. Tailored trousers. Jewelry that whispered old money. Her smile was polished to a hard gleam. Without waiting for an invitation, Soo-yeon entered and took the chair opposite Nivea. She pressed a button on the small table between them. Within 30 seconds, a staff member appeared. "Tea," Soo-yeon said. "The white peony. And whatever the American drinks." The staff member bowed and disappeared. "Adjusting," Nivea replied, closing her sketchbook. Soo-yeon's eyes tracked the movement. "It must be difficult. Coming from your background." The pause was delicate. Deliberate. The kind of verbal cut that draws just enough blood to sting. "My background includes a degree from Northwestern and a functioning design business," Nivea said. "What does yours include?" If Soo-yeon was surprised by the pushback, she didn't show it. The smile remained fixed, but something cold flickered in her eyes. 7 generations of Min family history. Top of my class at Seoul National University. Board member of Min Global Holdings. She examined her perfectly manicured nails. "But I'm sure your interior decorating is very fulfilling." The tea arrived. Soo-yeon took her cup without acknowledging the server. "My brother's accident changed things," she continued after a sip. "The company needs stability. Strong leadership. Not distractions. I'm not here for the company. Everyone's here for the company." Soo-yeon's voice remained pleasant, her eyes did not. Some people just don't know it yet. Before Nevaeh could respond, Suyun reached across and picked up the sketchbook. Not asking. Just taking. She flipped through the pages with casual disregard, pausing occasionally at a design. Interesting. She stopped on a page where Nevaeh had sketched a modern living room with traditional Korean elements incorporated. Do you sell these, or are they just hobbies? The word hobbies dripped with condescension. She closed the book and set it down, not quite carelessly but with studied indifference. We should have tea again, she said, standing. Family should know each other. Especially temporary family. She left as she'd arrived, without waiting for a response. Nevaeh's hands shook as she reached for the sketchbook. Not from fear. From anger. That book was hers. Those ideas were hers. She pulled it close, held it against her chest. In Chicago, she'd had little. But what little she had, she'd owned completely. Here, in this palace of wealth, even her privacy wasn't hers to keep. Here's something about power that rarely gets discussed: it doesn't always announce itself with shouting. With violence. With obvious threats. Often, real power moves in small cuts. Calculated slights. Moments of casual intrusion that say, without words, you don't belong here. You don't matter here. You exist at my pleasure. These are microaggressions, those subtle, often unintentional acts that communicate hostile or negative attitudes toward people who are perceived as other. But in places like the Min household, there's nothing micro or unintentional about them. They're strategy. They're designed to make you doubt yourself. To remind you of your place. To ensure you never get too comfortable. And the most dangerous thing about them is how they accumulate. One comment about your background might roll off your back. A dozen such comments, spread across days and weeks, become a weight you carry. A burden that stoops your shoulders. A voice in your head that starts to sound like your own. Unless you recognize the game being played. Unless you refuse to accept the rules. Sleep wouldn't come. Day 10. 11:30 p.m. Nevaeh stared at the ceiling of her suite, listening to the silence of the mansion at night. Different from daytime silence. Deeper. More complete. Occasionally broken by the soft footsteps of security making their rounds, but otherwise still. She'd tried reading. Tried sketching. Tried the meditation app she'd downloaded before her data plan stopped working. Nothing helped. So she decided to walk. The Min estate at night was a different place. Shadows stretched longer across marble floors. Moonlight spilled through windows, painting silver squares on walls. The art that lined the corridors, priceless paintings, ancient ceramics, sculptures worth more than her mother's house, took on an eerie quality in the half-light. She told herself she was just exploring. Just burning off restless energy. But her feet had a destination in mind before her conscious mind admitted it. The East Wing. Suk-Ki's study. She'd been avoiding it since the wedding. Had seen him only at a distance, wheeling through corridors, always accompanied by Jae-won or another staff member. Always busy. Always elsewhere. She wasn't planning to go in. Just to walk past. Maybe see if there was light under the door, evidence of him working late. But when she turned the corner, she found the door ajar. Light spilling out. Voices fading down another hallway, Suk-Ki and Jae-won, from the sound of it, moving away. Going somewhere else in the massive house. She should keep walking. She went in. The study was empty, but evidence of recent occupation lingered. Papers spread across the desk. A half-finished glass of amber liquid, whiskey, probably. A laptop open but dark in sleep mode. Nevaeh moved carefully, not touching anything. Just looking. This was Suk-Ki's space. His sanctuary. Being here felt like stepping inside someone's mind. The bookshelves were filled with volumes in multiple languages. Business. Economics. History. Philosophy. Not for show, the spines were cracked, the pages marked. These were books that had been read, studied, absorbed. A photograph caught her eye. Framed on the wall behind the desk. Suk-Ki on a mountain somewhere, standing tall against a backdrop of peaks and sky. He was smiling, a real smile, not the carefully controlled expressions she'd seen from him so far. He looked younger. Alive in a way the current version didn't. Standing. No wheelchair. No careful movements. Just a man in hiking clothes, strong legs planted firmly on rock, arms spread wide as if embracing the world. The accident, she thought. Before the accident. That's when she noticed the cabinet. Tucked in the corner, wooden doors closed but not quite flush. As if someone had closed them in a hurry. She shouldn't. She did. The cabinet was locked, but the key was in the desk drawer. The first drawer she tried. Almost as if someone had been interrupted while looking at whatever was inside. Just curious, she told herself. Just trying to understand. She opened the cabinet. Medical files. Dozens of them. Thick folders labeled by date, going back 2 years. Too many, too detailed for a simple car accident. She pulled one out. Flipped it open. Words jumped out at her. Thallium levels. Chronic exposure. Neurological damage to lower extremities. Attempted assassination, suspect internal. Her blood ran cold. Poisoned. Not an accident. Someone had poisoned him. Deliberately. Over time. And the suspect was internal, someone inside the family. Inside this house. She pulled out her phone. Googled thallium poisoning. Stomach dropping as she read, colorless, odorless, tasteless. Often used in assassinations because symptoms mimic other illnesses. Difficult to detect unless specifically tested for. Someone had tried to murder Suk-Ki. Slowly. Carefully. Someone he trusted enough to eat with. To live with. The sound of wheelchair wheels on hardwood reached her ears a second too late. Find what you were looking for? Suk-Ki's voice was quiet. Dangerous quiet. He sat in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the hall light behind him. His face was in shadow, but she could feel his eyes on her. On the file in her hands. You were poisoned. She didn't try to hide it. Didn't try to excuse herself. Just stated the fact that now hung between them. Silence stretched. 1 heartbeat. 2. 3. Get out. Someone in this house tried to kill you, she said, not moving. And you're still here. Why? His hands tightened on the wheelchair arms. Because I don't run. Because running means they win. And me? She held up the file. Am I part of winning? He didn't answer. That was an answer in itself. She set the file down on his desk. Walked past him without another word. At the door, she stopped. I'm not running either. But if you want me to survive this house, you might want to start telling me what I'm surviving. She didn't wait for his response. Behind her, she heard him exhale, long, slow, like something had cracked. Maybe it had. Mr. Min would like to speak with you. When you have time. Jae-won delivered the message as Nevea was finishing breakfast on day 12. His tone was careful, emphasizing the "when you have time" part. Not a command. A request. That alone was different enough to make her pause. I have time now. Suk-Ki was waiting in his study. The same room where she'd been caught snooping 2 nights before. The medical files were on the desk, no longer hidden in the cabinet. Open. Visible. Deliberate. A tea service sat on the side table. Neither of them touched it. Thank you for coming. His voice was measured, controlled. But something in his posture was different. less rigid. The wall between them still stood, but now it had a door. You asked. I came. She remained standing just inside the entrance, not approaching the desk. Please. He gestured to the chair across from him. She took it. Waited. 2 years ago. He began without preamble. I was being groomed to take full control of Min Global. My father was stepping back. The board was supportive. The transition was proceeding smoothly. His eyes were fixed on a point somewhere past her shoulder. Not avoiding her gaze, exactly. Just seeing something that wasn't in the room with them. Then I started getting sick. Subtle at first. Fatigue. Digestive issues. Hair loss. Symptoms that could be attributed to stress or a dozen other common causes. He reached for one of the files, opened it. Clinical details. Test results. Hospital admissions. It got worse. Nerve pain. Muscle weakness. Specifically in my legs. Doctors couldn't find a cause. Until one of them, a friend from university, not on the family payroll, ordered a specific toxicology panel. He pushed the file toward her. The results were highlighted, thallium. Levels far above normal. Consistent with chronic exposure. Thallium. Historically popular for assassinations. Odorless. Tasteless. Accumulates in the body over time. Almost impossible to detect unless you're specifically looking for it. Nevaeh studied the file, though she already knew what it contained. Who? The investigation never determined that. His voice was too even. Interesting how that happens when the suspects control the investigation. But you have suspicions. His eyes flicked toward the door. Toward the wing of the house where Soo-Yun's suite was located. That was answer enough. Why are you telling me this now? Nevaeh asked. Because you already know half of it. And half knowledge is more dangerous than none. He leaned forward slightly. Especially in this house. Is this where you threaten me to stay silent? Something flickered across his face, not quite a smile. Too sharp for that. This is where I give you the choice my family never gave me. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. He was offering her something beyond information. Acknowledgement. Agency. The dignity of choice. Something shifted in the air between them. Not trust. Not yet. But recognition. Two people in cages, looking at each other clearly for the first time. It started on October 12th, he said, closing the file. A family dinner. Something in the soup, we think. That was the first major exposure. Remember that date? She nodded once, filing it away. The precision with which he mentioned it meant it would matter later. Will they try again? She asked. Eventually. When it's convenient. His gaze was direct now. You should know what you've married into. What he didn't say, what he didn't need to say, you should know you might be next. Nevaeh arrived at her usual time, expecting the usual solitude. Instead, she found Soo-Ki already seated at the far end of the table. He didn't move to join her. Didn't force conversation. Just nodded once in acknowledgement. They ate in silence. But it was a different kind of silence than before. Not cold. Not hostile. Just quiet. The next day, the same. And the next. She was reading a book on Korean architecture when he wheeled in with a stack of reports. He settled at the desk by the window, far enough away for privacy, close enough for awareness of each other. After an hour, she frowned at her book. Sighed. Problem? He spoke without looking up. This translation is awful. Half the technical terms don't make sense. He glanced at the cover. That one's terrible. Read the blue one instead. Third shelf, near the window. She found it. He was right. It was better. She was sketching when he passed by the open door. Paused. Watched for a moment. May I see? The question was tentative, surprising them both. She hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward him. It was a redesign of the dining room, warmer, less formal, with elements of both Korean traditional design and Western comfort. She'd been working on it for days, not for any purpose except to keep her hands busy, her mind engaged. He studied it for a long time. Said nothing. But he looked, really looked, at what she'd created. Then he nodded once and left. Outside her door, books on Korean language basics. No note. No explanation needed. She started studying that afternoon. Small moments. Individually meaningless. Collectively, a shift. A new rhythm establishing itself in the silent halls of the Min estate. On day 18, she was walking back from the library when she passed a room she hadn't noticed before. Door ajar. The sound of exertion inside, controlled breathing, the slight squeak of equipment. She shouldn't have looked. She did. It was a private therapy room. Exercise equipment modified for rehabilitation. Parallel bars running the length of one wall. And between them, Sookie, standing. Gripping the bars with white-knuckle determination, face tight with effort and pain, taking one slow, excruciating step after another. His physical therapist stood nearby, monitoring, occasionally correcting his form. Neither of them saw her. She backed away silently, processing what she'd witnessed. He could walk. Not well. Not far. But more than he showed to the world. He was healing, slowly, painfully, secretly. And he was keeping that progress hidden from the same people he suspected of poisoning him. Sometimes we hide our healing because we're afraid to hope. Because the vulnerability of trying, of potentially failing, feels more dangerous than the safety of staying broken. This is especially true when the world expects your brokenness. When your weakness serves someone else's purpose. When getting stronger might make you a target again. But there's another truth, harder to see. Sometimes the progress we're most afraid to share is the progress that matters most. The steps we take when no one is watching. The strength we build in quiet rooms, away from judging eyes. These private victories aren't just about physical healing. They're about reclaiming what was taken. About defying the story others have written for you. About the quiet, stubborn insistence that you are more than your damage. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply to stand, even for a moment, when the world expects you to remain seated. Late afternoon. The first real snow of winter began falling over Seoul. Nevaeh watched it from her window, fat, lazy flakes drifting down, transforming the precise lines of the garden into something softer, more forgiving. The world outside turning white and quiet. She slipped out through the terrace doors, wanting to feel it on her skin. The Chicago native in her wasn't impressed by the gentle snowfall. This was nothing compared to lake-effect blizzards, but there was something magical about it nonetheless. The way it transformed this foreign place into something from a fairy tale. She'd underestimated the cold, though. Her thin sweater wasn't enough protection against the winter air. But she didn't want to go back inside. Not yet. She hugged herself, watching her breath cloud in front of her. The soft whir of wheelchair wheels on stone made her turn. Sookie approached, a heavy coat folded over his lap. Without a word, he held it out to her. She took it. Put it on. The wool was warm, expensive, too big for her frame. Thank you. He nodded, positioning his chair beside the stone bench where she'd been sitting. They watched the snow in silence for several minutes. The garden disappeared gradually beneath a white blanket. Tree branches collected delicate outlines of frost. Their breath mingled in the cold air. You don't seem like a person who sits in gardens, she said finally. I wasn't. Before. His voice was quiet. I ran marathons. Climbed mountains. The stillness, it would have felt like failure. And now? Now I notice gardens. The faintest hint of a smile touched his lips. Maybe that's not worse. Just different. The simplicity of the statement caught her off guard. There was no self-pity in his voice. No bitterness. Just acceptance and something else, a kind of peace she hadn't expected from him. She pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders, suddenly aware of his scent on the fabric. Something subtle. Cedar, maybe. Clean. Human. I've been working on something, she said, reaching into the coat pocket where she'd tucked her sketchbook. Not just the house redesigns. She opened to pages she hadn't shown anyone. Designs for a collection, furniture, textiles, decorative objects. All inspired by what she'd seen here. Korean lines combined with elements from her own heritage. Traditional materials used in contemporary ways. A fusion of worlds. I probably can't build any of it, she added quickly. It's just processing. Making sense of where I am. He took the sketchbook carefully, as if aware of its importance to her. Turned the pages slowly. His expression changed as he moved through the designs, subtle shifts she might have missed a week ago but could read now. Interest. Surprise. Recognition. These aren't hobbies, he said finally, echoing his sister's dismissive word from days before. These are real. It was the first genuine compliment he'd given her. Not grudging. Not calculated. Real. Their eyes met. Something flickered between them. Not romance, it was too soon, too complicated for that. But recognition. Respect. The beginning of something neither of them had expected when they signed the contract. He looked away first, back to the falling snow. You should show these to someone. Build them. Maybe someday, she said. When I go home. He nodded, not challenging the when. Not pretending their arrangement was anything but temporary. The snow kept falling. They stayed in the garden until dark, speaking occasionally but mostly sitting in companionable silence. No one came to interrupt. Maybe no one knew where they were. Maybe someone did and chose to let them be. That night, for the first time since arriving in Seoul, Nevaeh slept without dreaming of escape. Instead, she dreamed of mountains. I have a business proposition. It was day 22. Morning light streamed through the study windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Suk-ki sat behind his desk, Jae-won standing quietly at his side. Nevaeh had been summoned, not demanded, requested, after breakfast. On the desk between them, her sketchbook, open to the collection designs she'd shown him in the garden. A laptop turned toward her, displaying sleek jewelry pieces embedded with subtle technology. And a third item, a contract, different from their marriage agreement. Thinner. Newer. Min Global is launching a lifestyle brand next quarter, Suk-ki continued. Smart jewelry. Wearable technology with fashion credibility. Jae-won tapped a key on the laptop. The screen changed to market projections, competitor analysis, target demographics. The current design direction isn't working. Suk-ki's voice was matter-of-fact. Focus groups find it too clinical. Too. He paused, searching for the word. Too Korean, Jae-won supplied. Too focused on domestic markets when we need global appeal. Nevaeh studied the designs on screen. They were beautiful in a minimalist way. Clean. Precise. Elegant. And utterly forgettable. Let me guess, she said. Soo-yeon's team. The briefest flicker of confirmation crossed Suk-ki's face. The collection launches in 12 weeks. We need a new direction. She looked up from the laptop. And you want me to do what, exactly? Consult? Lead. He gestured to her sketchbook. Full creative control. Your own studio. Your own team. The offer hung in the air between them. Unexpected. Impossible. Tempting. Why me? The question wasn't doubt. It was caution. You see patterns others miss. You understand culture as language. His gaze was direct, unflinching. And, he paused, you have nothing to lose, which means you can't be corrupted. The bluntness of the assessment startled her into a laugh. That's almost a compliment. It's the truth. She looked back at the laptop, the designs that represented millions in development costs. Then at her own sketches, drawn in quiet moments to keep herself sane. This makes me a target. Not a question. A statement of fact. You were already a target, Suki replied. This makes you dangerous. She considered this. There was a certain logic to it. A mouse hiding in the corner is always prey. A mouse that fights back changes the game. What would my title be? Creative Director, Parson X Min Collection. Jae-won spoke as if the name had already been decided. My name on it. She let that sink in. Not hidden. Visible. The fusion is the selling point, Suki said. East meets West. Traditional meets modern. It's the natural extension of what you've already designed. She turned to the contract on the desk. Skimmed the first page. The terms were generous. More than generous. I'll need to read the fine print. Of course. She thought of Soo-yeon's cold eyes. The threat beneath her polished exterior. The game being played in this house, a game where Nevaeh was supposed to be a pawn, not a player. I have conditions, she said finally. No oversight from Soo-yeon. I report directly to you. And if the collection succeeds, I want a real stake. Not just a payment. A percentage that I take with me when I leave. Suki's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, in assessment. Then he nodded once. Agreed. Just like that. No negotiation. No pushback. As if he'd expected her demands and already decided to meet them. She reached for the contract. One more thing, she added. I want to start immediately. For the first time since she'd known him, something close to a real smile touched Suki's lips. The car will be ready in an hour. Okay, quick pause. If you're still here, you're invested. And that means this story's hitting how it should. But real talk, only about 30% of people watching right now are actually subscribed. That's wild to me. If you're enjoying this, if you want to see how Nevaeh handles what's coming next, just hit subscribe. It takes 1 second and it genuinely helps more people find stories like this. Alright, back to it. Min Global Tower dominated the Gangnam skyline, 70 stories of steel and glass, a monument to wealth and power. The security in the lobby was discreet but thorough. Retinal scans. Key cards with embedded chips. Guards who looked like they'd once served in special forces. The 47th floor had been renovated in a hurry. Fresh paint. New workstations. A conference room with a view of the Han River. When Nevaeh stepped off the private elevator on day 25, the space still smelled of paint and new carpet. 6 people waited for her. 3 men. 3 women. All Korean. All impeccably dressed. All wearing identical expressions of skeptical politeness. Her team. Soo-yeon's team until 3 days ago. Good morning, she said in careful Korean, one of the phrases she'd been practicing. Then, switching to English, I'm Nevaeh Parson. Thank you for being here. Their bows were correct but cool. Professional courtesy without warmth. She caught the subtle glances they exchanged, the silent communication of people who've worked together long enough to have their own language. The oldest of the group, a woman in her 40s named Kim Ji-yeon, stepped forward. We have prepared the preliminary designs for your review. Her tone made it clear she expected those designs to be dismissed. Thank you. I'd like to see everything. But first, I'd like to hear from each of you. That caught them off guard. Ji-yun blinked. Here, what, exactly? Your thoughts. Your ideas. What's working? What isn't? You've been living with this project longer than I have. Nevea moved to the conference table. Please. Sit. They did, exchanging another round of glances. More surprised than hostile now. She didn't demand authority. She listened. Asked questions. Took notes. By the end of that first day, the wall of resistance hadn't fallen, but it had developed cracks. Nevea arrived at 7 a.m. Left at 9 p.m. Day 27, the same. She pulled long hours, not for show but because there was work to do. A collection to reimagine. A team to build. And always, invisibly, a sister-in-law to outmaneuver. Gradually, the studio culture began to shift. The team stopped waiting for instructions and started offering ideas. The youngest designer, Lee Min-ho, showed her Korean streetwear trends that might integrate with the technology. The materials expert, Park Sun-ah, brought in samples of traditional celadon glaze that caught the light like living things. Nevea pinned her sketchbook pages on what became their inspiration wall. Shared her vision for something she called bridge, pieces that connected cultures, technologies, traditions. Smart jewelry that monitored health but looked like art. Not tech that happens to be pretty, she explained. Art that happens to be smart. She showed them her fusion concepts, Korean celadon glazes paired with patterns inspired by African beadwork. Traditional materials used in unexpected ways. The elegant simplicity of Hanok architecture translated into wearable forms. The skepticism faded from their eyes. They started to see it. Started to believe. The first prototype, a bracelet of celadon glazed ceramic links with embedded sensors, the clasp inspired by traditional Korean knotwork. When Min-ho suggested a modification to the clasp mechanism, making it more secure while preserving the aesthetic, Nevea immediately incorporated the change. Gave him full credit in the development notes. His surprise was visible. Under the previous leadership, credit flowed upward, never down. Focus group results for the first 3 designs came back positive. Unique. Fresh. Luxury with meaning. The team celebrated with late-night fried chicken and beer in the conference room. Ji-yun, who had been the most reserved, raised her glass to Nevea. To bridge, she said. And to new perspectives. That night, Min-ho stayed late to help Nevea refine the next prototype. Not because she asked. Because he wanted to. The walls were coming down. On day 31, Suki visited the studio. Unannounced. The team snapped to attention when his wheelchair rolled through the door. Nevea noticed how their body language changed, straightening, tensing, eyes downcast. Respect mixed with fear. He nodded acknowledgement but didn't interrupt. Just positioned himself in the corner of the studio and watched as Nevea led the team through a critique session. For an hour, he observed silently. Then left without comment. The next morning, Nevea found a note on her desk. The emerald piece. Consider adjusting the clasp for smaller wrists. Otherwise, perfect. He'd been paying attention. To every detail. She made the adjustment before the day was over. Nevea returned to the estate late, mind still buzzing with design problems and solutions. The collection was taking shape. The team was coming together. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, she felt like herself again. Not a transaction. Not a trophy. A professional with skills and purpose. She was sketching in her suite when the door opened without a knock. Soo-yun stood in the doorway, elegant as always in a designer suit, eyes cold as winter. She held a tablet in one manicured hand. Working late? The question was pleasant. The tone was not. Nevea didn't give her the satisfaction of appearing startled. Just closed her sketchbook calmly. Can I help you with something? Soo-yun entered uninvited, closing the door behind her. I thought we should have a chat. Sister to sister. The last two words dripped with mockery. She crossed to the seating area and perched on the edge of a chair, setting her tablet on the coffee table between them. You've been busy. Creative director of the Aura collection. My collection, until recently. Her smile was razor thin. Quite the promotion for someone with no experience in wearable technology. Your team is talented, Nevaeh replied. They just needed a fresh perspective. Soo-yeon tapped the tablet screen, bringing it to life. I wonder if they'd be so welcoming if they knew the real reason you're here. A document appeared on screen. Legal language. Signature blocks. Names that made Nevaeh's breath catch. Roy Parson. Min Global Holdings. You didn't know. Soo-yeon's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. How interesting. She slid the tablet closer to Nevaeh. Your uncle, your father's brother, owns a small technology company. Unremarkable except for one thing. He holds patents on fiber optic technology that Min Global needs for our North American expansion. Nevaeh stared at the document. Uncle Roy. She barely knew him, her father's older brother who'd moved to California years ago. They exchanged Christmas cards. Nothing more. These patents are worth approximately $400 million, Soo-yeon continued. But your uncle was resistant to our acquisition offers. Until we discovered his connection to your family. To your father's debts. To your little financial situation. The truth hit Nevaeh like a physical blow. The debts. The contract. The marriage. All of it, leverage for a business acquisition. Surprised? Soo-yeon's voice was silk over steel. You thought you were special? That my brother chose you for your, design talents? Your sparkling personality? She laughed softly. You're a transaction. Always were. Nevaeh's hands tightened around the tablet. And what are you? The question caught Soo-yeon off guard. Just for a moment. I'm the heir. The real one. Before, during, and after you're gone. She stood smoothly. Remember that when you're playing with my team, in my company. She moved to the door, then paused. Your mother called yesterday. Asking about your grandmother's medical bills. Apparently there's been some confusion about the payments. Her smile was vicious. It would be a shame if something happened to their care arrangements. Paperwork gets so complicated. The threat was clear without being explicit. Cooperate. Stay in your lane. Or your family suffers. After Soo-yeon left, Nevaeh sat motionless, processing what she'd learned. The documents on the tablet confirmed everything. The marriage wasn't just about her family's debts. It was about Uncle Roy's patents. She was the connection. The leverage. The bait. She didn't cry. Didn't rage. Instead, she found a notepad and began making a list. Questions that needed answers. People who might have them. Information that could give her power in a game she hadn't known she was playing. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. She picked up her phone. Dialed a number she hadn't called in weeks. 3 rings. 4. Then her mother's voice, tentative, Nevaeh? Mama. Tell me about Uncle Roy. Tell me about his business. Silence on the line. Then, baby, how do you know about that? Because I'm standing in the middle of it. And I'm done being the last one to know. There's a profound difference between being used and having value. When you're used, your worth is tied to what someone can extract from you, your labor, your connections, your body, your life. You're a means to an end. A tool. Disposable once the purpose is fulfilled. Having value is different. Your worth exists independent of others' needs. It's intrinsic. It's yours to assess and determine. But here's the paradox. Sometimes we discover our value precisely because someone tried to use us. The very act of exploitation reveals what makes us valuable in the first place. The connections they want. The skills they need. The position only we can fill. And when we understand our value, truly understand it, we gain power. Because knowledge, especially painful knowledge, is never neutral. It's potential energy. It's leverage. It's a weapon, if we choose to wield it. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most strength. It's the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain from the truth. If this story moved you like it moved me, I'd love to know your thoughts. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that no matter where we are in the world, we all understand love, loss, and the courage it takes to start again. I know you aren't ready for what awaits in part 2. Put on your notifications on so as to not miss it. Thank you for watching.